Okay, so this morning we are going to start with Jonathan Swift, J. Swift, not to be confused with T. Swift. Jonathan Swift was born November 30th, 1667, and he died October 19th, 1745. Swift was born in Dublin, Ireland. He was an Anglo-Irish satirist. He was an essayist, political pamphleteer. He had kind of a tumultuous political background. Initially, he was a Whig, and then he became a Tory. And his political affiliation sort of fluctuated through his entire life. At the end of his life, he became Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, which is a lovely picture of some of the remains to your right of the screen. But here are some fun facts about Swift. First, he had English parents. His parents actually went to Ireland to find their fortune. And so even though his parents were English, Jonathan Swift identified as Irish. His parents were also Protestant, which is important to remember because a lot of the conflict is because Ireland was predominantly Catholic at the time. His father died 7 months before Swift was born, so Jonathan Swift never met his father. Another interesting fact is that he was kidnapped by his nurse and taken to England for 3 years at the very beginning of his life. And here he claimed that his nurse taught him the Bible and that he received a lot of his religious background, which is, he was just 3, so I guess he was bright from the start. He attended Kilkenny School, Trinity College, and Oxford University. Kilkenny and Trinity are in Ireland, and they're the most prestigious of schools. And then, of course, we all know Oxford in England. During his time at school, he had a lot of symptoms of nausea, and he would get dizzy. He would fall downstairs a lot. Sometimes he wouldn't be able to hear appropriately. So eventually he was diagnosed with Meniere's syndrome, and he suffered through this throughout his entire life. And at the end of his life, it tended to sort of facilitate a lot of people to believe that he was suffering from dementia, which now we think that it was just his Meniere's syndrome that affected his ability to communicate and to understand what was going on around him. And then after he graduated from Oxford University, he secured a position with Sir William Templeton, and he became his secretary as well as a tutor to a young girl named Esther Johnson, who later Jonathan Swift would always affectionately call Stella. Now, when Jonathan Swift began working with Sir William Templeton, he was approximately 24, and Esther was 8 and 9 when they met, and they had a friendship, a companionship for the rest of her life. She passes away before Jonathan Swift does, but it was a very interesting relationship. It is reported in everybody's sort of journals and diaries, and a lot of scholars have done a lot of research about their relationship, of course, because it's interesting. Whose BFF is a 9-year-old when they're 24? That's creepy. But it is stated that they were never without a companion. But as time progresses, we have a lot of poetry, a lot of prose by Swift, and it's dedicated to Stella. So who knows? Who knows what people do? I don't. So let's keep going. Swift is remembered for works such as Gulliver's Travel, which is probably where you've heard of Jonathan Swift before, Gulliver's Travel. We are going to read A Modest Proposal. Also, he wrote A Journal to Stella, The Battle of the Books, and A Tale of a Tub. Now, when we talk about Jonathan Swift, we typically think of satire. Satire, which is the use of ridicule, irony, and sarcasm in speech or writing for the ostensible purpose of exposing and discouraging vice or folly. So, Jonathan Swift is the master of satire, and he is the master of two types of satire. The first one is the Horatian. Horatian comes from Horace. Now, Horace generally playfully mocked the societal norms of his day. And it's named after Horace because he tended to be very witty, very clever, yet gentle with his subjects. Rather than attacking evils, Horatian satire ridicules kind of universal human folly. So he kind of pokes fun at everybody all at once. And that way the reader may identify themselves or somebody that they know, and then they're kind of allowed to kind of laugh at themselves as well as the individuals who they have recognized perhaps had the same attributes. So it's a gentle, witty, clever satire. Now, this is different from the Juvenalian. Juvenalian tends to attack public officials and governmental organizations. These tend to be harsh. A lot of times it will speak about things not only being wrong or unjust, but the fact that they are evil, like super bad. Juvenalian satire tends to be more abrasive. It uses strong irony and sarcasm. And it's a polarized political satire, which often, its purpose is often to provoke change. It's really not meant to be as humorous as the Horatian, but it tends to be a bit more straightforward and get to the point. Now, at the point that we are receiving A Modest Proposal, it was actually published in 1729, but I think you need to know a bit of background of what's happening in Ireland, what has happened in the past, so we can kind of have a good structure or foundation when we reach and begin reading A Modest Proposal. In 1641 and again in 1689, the Irish Catholics rebelled against the Protestant settlers. At this point, England has decided that they would like to colonize parts of Ireland. Ireland is typically, the majority of it is Catholic at this point. So not only do the English want to bring, to come and colonize, but they also want to convert the native Irish who are Catholic. And of course, this causes a problem. So following the Williamite War, the ruling class of English settlers, known as the Protestant Ascendancy, these guys dominated Ireland. And beginning in 1691, as punishment for Irish support of the Catholic James II, the Great Pretender, and we're going to see the name the Great Pretender in the Modest Proposal. But anyway, the Great Pretender against Protestant William of Orange, the British enacted a new series of penal laws that further restricted Catholics' economic, political, social, and religious rights. This was a terrible time to be Catholic in Ireland. These new laws imposed a ban on marriage between Catholic and Protestants, so there was no intermingling. It barred Catholics from teaching school, practicing law, and serving in Parliament, being educated abroad, owning firearms, practicing Catholicism, speaking Gaelic, voting, and purchasing land. So these were some pretty tough laws. So like I said, A Modest Proposal was published in 1729 after 3 years of drought and crop failure. Now, 3 years of drought and crop failure. This forced 30,000 Irish to abandon their homes in search for work, food, and shelter. A lot of us, if we have done our genealogy or we look at our genealogy, a great amount of our own ancestors left Ireland at about 1729 to come to New York and New Jersey to resettle, to hopefully find a more profitable lifestyle or just not starve to death, quite basically. So it was a terrible time to be Catholic and Irish. But as we read A Modest Proposal, our narrator, who is also sometimes called the projector, he wants to approach this proposal as he is set up as a benevolent humanitarian, that he wants to attempt to correct a social evil by means of a theoretically conceived plan. So our narrator, our projector, has a plan that is going to help all of these people who have been affected by this crop failure and the fact that the Irish is, or rather Ireland has this Catholic problem. You're going to find that Jonathan Swift, with him being Protestant, was very anti-Catholic. So next, we have a couple of questions to explore, and you can come back and look at these after we read A Modest Proposal. It really won't make a whole lot of sense right now. But just remember that these questions are here. So I think they're interesting. So, all right, Jonathan Swift, there you go. You know him, you've met him.